You've spent most of your life thinking you're one person. A name, a nationality, a job title, a personality trait or two. Maybe you like books. Maybe you like people. Maybe you're the nice guy, or the strong woman, or the quiet genius. And you walk through life with this fragile label pinned to your chest like a name tag at a networking event. But let me tell you something Jung understood better than almost anyone else, seeing that identity you wear is a costume. A mask, a front you were handed by your parents, your religion, your culture, and you've mistaken it for your face. You are not one person. You are a chorus of characters, 10 to be exact. 10 archetypes buried deep inside your psyche, each one silently pulling strings behind your thoughts, fears, dreams, and delusions. And until you understand them, until you confront them, you are a puppet pretending to be a master. Jung didn't invent these archetypes. He discovered them. Just like Newton didn't invent gravity, these forces were already there, baked into the human experience, etched into the deep bones of our unconscious. And the terrifying truth, you are not in control of yourself. At least, not until you know who. What is living inside you? Why do you sabotage relationships just when they get good? Why do you pretend to be humble when your heart aches for glory? Why do you keep playing small when part of you knows you were built for war? Because the archetypes inside you are at war with each other. The hero wants to rise. The orphan wants to hide. The magician wants to transform, while the rebel wants to destroy. And you've been caught in the crossfire your entire life, without even realizing the battle was happening. This is not philosophy. This is psychological warfare. And if you don't become the commander of your own psyche, someone else will. Look around. Most people are not free. They're predictable, programmable. Machiavellian once said men are driven by two things, fear and self-interest. Jung would have added unconscious archetypes. They're not choosing their fate. They're acting out scripts written centuries ago, handed down by ancestors who never questioned them. The hero who never dies. The lover who always sacrifices. The fool who can't stop laughing while the world burns. So here's the uncomfortable truth: you are not who you think you are. You are who you suppress, who you run from, who you silence at 3 a.m. when your shadow starts whispering. And the longer you ignore these pieces of yourself, the more they leak out. Through addiction, depression, passive-aggressive sabotage, or an endless stream of empty pleasure that never really satisfies. The great strategist knows this: you cannot dominate others until you dominate yourself. Napoleon understood it. He wore the hero like armor, but the magician gave him vision. He used the ruler to consolidate power, but beneath it all, the orphan, the abandoned Corsican child, was always there, fueling the fire. But he knew his parts. He made them serve him, and that made him dangerous. So what makes you think you're above it? You're not. Let's begin with the one you most likely project. The face you show the world, the hero. Everyone loves the hero archetype. The achiever, the fighter, the one who overcomes all odds. It's the story society worships because it's clean, noble, easy to digest. But let me ask you, are you really trying to help people? Or are you addicted to the applause? Most heroes are insecure. They're not brave. They're performing bravery. They need a dragon to slay, because if they stop moving, if they sit in silence, the darkness inside starts to speak, and they don't like what it says. So they run toward battles, toward causes, toward burnout. They put on the cape to avoid the cave. And you post your achievements, smile through your exhaustion, and call it discipline. But what if it's fear? What if it's just a clever way to escape the orphan in you? The scared, wounded child who thinks he's not enough. Because he's there too. The orphan is the part of you that never got what it needed. And now it walks through life with quiet desperation, waiting to be saved. Do you recognize it? The part of you that gets jealous, that clings, that over-explains in text or needs constant validation. It's not weakness. It's ancient. And if you don't confront it, if you don't integrate it, you'll keep bleeding onto people who didn't cut you. Now here's the twist Jung warned us about. The hero and the orphan often come together. You see it in great leaders and revolutionaries. Caesar cried when he saw the statue of Alexander the Great. Not because he lacked courage, but because he feared he'd never be enough. That's the orphan. But what did he do with that pain? He turned it into empire. That's the hero. This is what people don't understand about true power. It's not about pretending to be whole. It's about weaponizing your fractures, your need to be seen, your fear of being forgotten, your hunger for meaning in a meaningless world. These aren't flaws. They are fuel, if you know how to use them. But let's go deeper. There's another archetype most people reject because it doesn't make you likable. It makes you dangerous. The rebel. You feel it when someone tells you what to do and your blood starts to boil. When you look at tradition and see prison bars. When someone praises your obedience and you want to spit. The rebel in you doesn't want to belong. It wants to destroy the lie. And let me be clear, the rebel is not a teenager screaming for attention. The true rebel is strategic, cold, controlled chaos. It burns down illusions to reveal truth. It sees corruption in sacred places, schools, churches, governments, and calls it what it is. This is the archetype that built revolutions, that dethroned kings, that exposed lies hiding behind thrones of virtue. But here's where it gets Machiavellian. If you let the rebel lead without restraint, you become a tyrant, or a madman, or worse, a useless critic shouting from the sidelines while brave men do the hard work. You've seen this. People who burn everything, but build nothing. They mistake destruction for freedom. But without the builder, the ruler archetype, you're just an arsonist. True mastery is when the rebel and the ruler work together. That's how great leaders are born. They dismantle the old and construct something better. Like Kissinger, who understood how to maneuver through the darkest political corridors without being swallowed by them. He saw the game as it was, not as it should be. And he played it with ruthless clarity, not because he hated the system, but because he wanted to control it. That's the ruler. But let me ask you, are you building anything worth ruling? Or are you just rebelling against a world that scares you? Most people never evolve past this cycle. They bounce between the orphan and the rebel their entire life. Hurt and anger, wound and reaction. Their sight swings like a broken compass, always seeking, never settling. But there's a better way, a smarter way. It begins by knowing which archetype is currently driving your life, and which ones you've buried. You see, some people live entirely in the magician, the visionary, the alchemist, the one who sees patterns where others see chaos. They dream, they innovate, they bend reality. But if the magician forgets the body, if it loses touch with the lover, the warrior, the grounded parts of life, it becomes detached, unstable, consumed by ideas that never reach the ground. Einstein danced with the magician. So did Da Vinci. But they also knew the price of being too far ahead of their time: isolation, misunderstanding, madness. The magician must return to earth, or he risks floating into irrelevance. And maybe that's you. Too many thoughts, not enough action, always preparing, never pouncing. You call it strategy, but maybe it's fear in disguise. So I'll ask you plainly, which part of you is winning right now? Is it the hero pretending everything's fine? The orphan begging to be loved? The rebel burning bridges to feel alive? Or the magician building castles in the sky while your real life crumbles? This is not self-help. This is self-confrontation. Because until you look into the mirror of these archetypes and say, yes, that is me, you will never know who you truly are. You will chase women, money, God, success, thinking they'll fix you. But it's not out there. It's in the shadow, the dreamed, the rage, the parts you were told to repress because they made you too much, or not enough. But here's what no one told you. You are not too much. You are overflowing with potential you've never dared to touch. Because if you did, if you truly embodied every archetype within you, you'd be unstoppable. But first you must descend. The journey of self begins in the underworld, not the heavens. That's where we go next. Descent. That's the part nobody tells you about. Everyone talks about rising, winning, enlightenment, becoming your best self. But the truth is, no man rises until he first falls, deliberately. Until he dares to descend into the black cellar of his own psyche and meet the creatures he spent a lifetime avoiding. And down there, waiting in the darkness, are archetypes too messy for public praise. They don't wear crowns or medals. They wear chains. And they whisper truths no one wants to hear. Let's start with one that terrifies the modern world. The shadow. This is the part of you that houses every trait you reject. The rage you hide behind a smile. The lust you bury beneath moralism. The envy you suppress while applauding others. The shadow is not evil, but it is powerful. And the more you deny it, the more it controls you. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your shadow is not your enemy, it's your double. And like any dangerous animal, it becomes loyal not when caged, but when confronted, respected, trained, and understood. Look at history. Every man who shaped the world learned how to dance with his shadow. Caesar slaughtered without hesitation, but he justified it with order, with destiny, with Rome. Napoleon crowned himself emperor, not out of humility, but because he knew the optics of a pope crowning him would make him look submissive. The shadow in him whispered, "Control the narrative, or it will control you." And Kissinger, he saw the game with eyes most people refused to open. Morality was a costume, power was the currency, and survival was everything. You might not like that, but that's the point. Your shadow doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about survival. So let me ask you, what have you exiled into your unconscious? The part of you that could manipulate, that could seduce, that could destroy someone's reputation with a single look. The part of you that fantasizes about rebellion, power, revenge but covers it with a Bible verse and a polite smile. You've silenced it. But you've also disarmed yourself, because the man who rejects his shadow is not good. He's weak. Real goodness is power, restrained. Real virtue is the lion who chooses not to kill, not the sheep who couldn't if he tried. That's what the lover archetype gets wrong when left unchecked. And yes, you have the lover in you too. We all do. It's the part of you that craves connection, beauty, intimacy, pleasure. It's the music in your soul, the longing in your eyes, the hunger to be known completely and touched without fear. But here's the danger when the lover runs your life. You become addicted to feelings, addicted to being desired, to being needed. You confuse being liked with being respected, and so you shrink. You soften your truth, you betray your instincts, you become agreeable, hoping that someone will love the real you, even though you've buried him beneath layers of compliance. The lover without the warrior is pathetic. He loves, cannot protect. He gives but cannot guard. He feels but cannot act. And the warrior, he's the one you've been told to suppress. Especially if you're a man. Because we live in a world terrified of masculine strength, of primal confidence, of fierce, unapologetic boundaries. But it's in you. It always has been. It's the part of you that rises when your back is against the wall. That doesn't wait for permission. That doesn't explain his purpose to people too afraid to act. The warrior doesn't need consensus. He doesn't need applause. He needs a mission. But in the modern world, most men are warriors without wars. So they fight themselves. They fight their wives. They fight petty battles online just to feel something. Because their sword has no direction. And their soul is starving for meaning. You feel this, don't you? You wake up with a quiet scream in your chest. You scroll, you smile, you nod. But part of you is dying, because you were built for conquest, and instead you're pretending to be harmless. But here's the true thing, the world does not respect harmless men. It uses them. The warrior must be awakened, not to become violent, but to become precise, decisive, strategic. Because a man who knows how to wield force, but doesn't have to use it, that man becomes a pillar. A king. A protector people trust. Not because he's nice, but because he's dangerous and chooses not to destroy. But even kings can fall if they don't understand the archetype of the fool. Now, this one is trickier than you think, because the fool wears two faces. The first, the innocent, the carefree, the wanderer who laughs at life, who doesn't take anything seriously, who dances on the edge of cliffs and calls it freedom. But the second, the fool, is the trickster, the saboteur, the part of you that undermines your own success just before the finish line. Why? Because if you actually win, if you actually become who you were meant to be, you have no more excuse to stay small. The fool is terrified of responsibility, of seriousness, of being seen as someone who matters. So he jokes, he deflects, he mocks people with purpose. He acts cool, while secretly feeling lost. And this archetype lives in you whether you want to admit it or not. You've felt it before. That part of you that cracks a joke during a serious moment, that skips the opportunity because it wasn't that deep, that laughs off ambition because you'd rather be invisible than accountable. This is self-sabotage dressed as humor. The greatest lie the fool tells you is that none of this matters. But it does. Everything matters, because your life is the only currency you'll ever have. And if you keep wasting it, thinking the game is a joke, you'll wake up one day surrounded by people who still laugh at mediocrity and resent anyone who aimed higher. So no, this isn't about becoming balanced or well-rounded. This is about integration. Bringing each archetype into its proper place, letting the warrior set boundaries, the lover offer depth, the fool keep you humble, but not small, and yes, even the shadow to keep you sharp and honest. But to do that, you need one more thing. You need the seeker, the part of you that never settles, that never gets comfortable, that looks around and says, is this it? Is this all there is? The seeker is the divine restlessness in you, the urge to go beyond your limits, to question everything, even the rules that got you this far. Without the seeker, you stagnate, you repeat, you rot. You become a king in a dying kingdom, clutching traditions that no longer serve the living. But the seeker pays a price. He never fully belongs. He's always a little distant, a little haunted, because he knows the destination isn't a place, it's a becoming. And most people, they fear this archetype because he threatens comfort, he disrupts routine. He makes you look at your life and say, what if I've built all of this just to avoid who I really am? But if you follow him, if you let the seeker lead, you will outgrow everyone who told you to be realistic. You will become someone your younger self would barely recognize, not because you became someone else, but because you finally became all of yourself. And here's where it all ties together. You are not meant to pick one archetype. You are meant to embody all of them, at the right time, in the right context, with ruthless clarity. The hero who knows when to fight, the lover who knows when to feel, the warrior who knows when to protect, the ruler who knows when to govern, the rebel who knows when to burn, the fool who knows when to laugh, but never to run, the magician who knows how to shape reality, the shadow who knows how to strike if needed, the orphan who knows how to feel pain and not be ruled by it, and the seeker who never lets you forget how much further you can go. You are a symphony of forces, a battalion of gods in a mortal shell, but you've been acting like a backgrounder in your own story. No more. The world does not need another obedient drone. It needs men and women who dare to know themselves, not superficially. Not, I'm a Gemini, or I'm just an introvert. No, it needs people who can look into the abyss of their own mind and say, I see you, all of you, and I will not run. That's the beginning of individuation. That's the path Jung walked, the path few dare to take. And that's what will continue in part 3. Because now, the question becomes, once you've met all these archetypes, how do you use them? Because knowledge without strategy is useless, and self-awareness without power is just poetry. Now you know the names. You've seen their faces in the mirror. Some you loved, and some you tried to forget. But recognition is not enough. What good is knowing your archetypes if they fight each other like wild dogs every time life applies pressure? What good is knowing you have a warrior inside you if you call on him only after you've already been humiliated? This is where most people fail. They go to therapy, they journal, they nod at podcasts like sages in training. But the moment reality tests them, they collapse into old patterns. The orphan panics, the fool deflects, the shadow takes the wheel, and the hero, he vanishes because he was never real, he was performance. So here's the next evolution command. You must not only know these parts of yourself, you must lead them. And leadership requires one thing above all else, order. Carl Jung said, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. That's because the moment you begin integrate the unconscious, the moment you step into real self-awareness, your ego starts to scream. Why? Because the ego wants to rule alone. It wants to be the only voice, the only face, the only identity. But the psyche doesn't work that way. You are a council of voices. And if you don't sit at the head of that table as a strategist, each archetype will try to seize the throne. The shadow will manipulate. The fool will laugh everything off. The lover will get drunk on emotion. The orphan will kneel to anyone who offers safety. And you'll wonder why your life feels like chaos, why every season is another emotional revolution, another failed campaign. Let me say it plainly. You are not meant to obey your emotions. You are meant to understand them. They are not commanders. They are messengers. And archetypes. They are not your masters. They are your generals. But generals without command become warlords. So how do you lead this internal army? You must master timing. Know when to invoke the warrior, and when to disarm him. Know when to soften into the lover, and when to harden into the rebel. Know when to laugh like the fool, and when to strike like the shadow. Power lies not in being one thing forever, but in being precisely the right thing at the right time. This is what the world misunderstands about authenticity. They say, be yourself. But which self? The self that wants revenge, the self that wants peace, the self that wants to seduce, or the one that wants to disappear. You are all of them. So the real challenge is not being yourself. It's learning to wield yourself. That's what made men like Caesar immortal. Not that he was only brave, or only cunning, or only charming, but that he could be whatever the situation demanded, without losing the core of who he was. He was a shapeshifter with a spine, and that is what the integrated man becomes. Let me give you a modern analogy. Imagine a corporate CEO walking into a boardroom. Behind the scenes, he's just been betrayed by his VP. His numbers are down. His investors are nervous. Now what does he do? If he lets the orphan take the lead, he shows weakness, pleads, panics. If he lets the rebel take over, he fires everyone, burns the ship, calls it revolution. If he lets the fool speak, he cracks jokes to avoid confrontation. But if he's integrated, if he's aware, he steps into the ruler calm, direct. But behind his words is the shadow watching. Behind his eyes, the warrior calculating. The magician is crafting the new vision. And the rebel, silently reminding him, if they push too far, we break the old system. That man isn't just leading a company. He's leading himself. And the same applies to you. Whether you're in business, relationships, politics, or building something for yourself. If you don't govern your inner world, you will be governed by it. The inner orphan will choose a partner not out of love, but out of fear. The inner lover will make you vulnerable to people who haven't earned your intimacy. The inner fool will keep you average, telling you life is a joke so you never have to face the risk of greatness. And you'll convince yourself you're being authentic. But really, you're being possessed. Archetypes that are not integrated become demons. They hijack your life, whispering through your actions, all while you keep asking, why does this keep happening to me? It happens because you're not in charge. But that ends now. Let's break this down. The hero needs a mission, but he must not become addicted to applause. He must serve something higher than recognition. The magician needs solitude and vision, but he must not float so high that he forgets to act. He must bring the vision down to earth. The lover needs connection, but it must be earned, not leaked onto anyone with a smile. The warrior must be strong, but not brittle. He must learn when to strike and when to wait in silence. The orphan must be acknowledged, but not obeyed. His pain is real, but he must not vote in your decisions. The fool must entertain, but never at the cost of your destiny. The rebel must challenge, but he must also build. Fire without architecture is just destruction. The ruler must lead, but not tyrannize. True kings serve their kingdom, not their ego. The shadow must be respected, but not unleashed without strategy. He is your nuclear option. He ends wars, not starts them. And the seeker, he must keep you moving, but never let you forget where you came from. Because if you abandon your roots in search of meaning, you become a wanderer, a ghost, floating through trends, religions, ideologies, never landing, always restless. But if you anchor yourself in truth, your truth, the seeker becomes your scout, your explorer, your edge. And that is what few men ever discover. Integration is not comfort. It's war. It is a constant balancing act between chaos and order, between impulse and strategy, between the self you want to be and the self you actually are. It is painful, ugly, liberating, and necessary. Because every time you lie to yourself about who you are, a piece of your soul dies. But every time you stand in that internal arena and face your archetypes with honesty and discipline, something awakens. A fire, a clarity, a sovereignty that no one can give you, and no one can take. And when you walk through the world with that level of inner command, people feel it. They might not know what it is, but they feel it. They defer to you. They follow you. They either want to serve you or destroy you, because a sovereign soul threatens every unconscious person it encounters. And that is the final piece. You do not integrate these archetypes to be happy. You integrate them to become free. Free from manipulation. Free from self-sabotage. Free from the prison of one-dimensional identity. Because the world doesn't need another good boy, or another nice girl, or another polite citizen who smiles while their dreams rot. It needs kings, queens, strategists, lovers who can lead, warriors who can weep, rebels who can rule, and all of them live inside you. But only one question remains: will you keep pretending to be just one, or will you become all of them, on purpose? Because the difference between chaos and destiny is choice, and yours is long overdue. So now you see, you are not broken, you are not weak, you are not lost, you are divided. Torn between masks you've worn for survival and voices you've silenced for approval. Torn between the man you were raised to be and the man your instincts scream to become. This is the root of your confusion, your hesitation, your fatigue. You've spent your life trying to become enough for everyone except yourself. Enough for your parents, enough for society. Enough for a system that profits from your obedience, your shame, your emotional slavery. But there's something deeper in you. Something ancient, something holy, something terrifying. It is the king, and no, not the Disney version. Not the gentle ruler who smiles and waves. I'm talking about the king of old. The sovereign, the storm, the law and the sword. The one whose presence alone shifts the room, without raising his voice. This archetype isn't about ego. It's about alignment. The king doesn't chase validation. He doesn't beg for peace. He doesn't compete with clowns or bark back at critics. He builds empires in silence and lets the results speak war. But here's the uncomfortable truth: most men today are allergic to their inner king. They've been trained like dogs. Sit, stay, be nice, don't offend, don't rise. Because if a man dares to step into his authority, if he sets standards, if he demands respect without apology, he's labeled toxic. You've seen it. The man who commands attention is called arrogant. The woman who leads with strength is called cold. The leader who won't bow to emotional manipulation is labeled a narcissist. But let me tell you something dangerous. The world is lying to you. Not because it hates power, but because it fears it. And the moment you integrate all your archetypes, the warrior, the lover, the fool, the shadow, the seeker, the ruler, the moment they report to your inner throne, you become ungovernable. Not in a reckless, immature way, but in the most terrifying way of all, with calm, with clarity, with command. People feel it. They sense it in your silence. They sense it in your posture. They sense it in your decisions, ruthless in logic, warm in heart, unshaken by noise. You stop asking, what will they think? You start asking, what is required? That's what the king does. He doesn't seek comfort. He seeks order. He doesn't chase control. He embodies it. He doesn't suppress the chaos within him. He disciplines it. He turns it into firewood, into policy, into law. But here's the twist. You can't fake this. You can't act like a king and hope the world buys it. Because the kingdom will test you. Your friends will test you. Your lover will test you. And your unconscious mind, your oldest enemy, will test you harder than all of them. Every weakness you refuse to face will show up in your kingdom as a crisis. Ignore your shadow. You'll be betrayed. Neglect your lover. You'll chase connection through fantasy and regret. Suppress your fool. You'll start taking yourself so seriously. Your own people will stop listening. You must embody all of it. Not perform it. Not cosplay it. Not fake it for TikTok views and empty compliments. Live it. Live it in the way you speak. Live it in the way you walk into a room. Grounded, unshaken. Live it in the way you hold the line when others break. Live it in the way you choose solitude over chaos, strategy over impulse, silence over noise. Because here's what they never taught you in school: integration is painful, but fragmentation is worse. You can either bleed now or rot slowly. You can face the fire now or choke in the smoke later. Your shadow is not your curse. It is your security system. Your lover is not your weakness. It is your soul's poetry. Your fool is not your enemy. It is your gateway to resilience. Your warrior is not your danger. It is your compass in a world of cowards. And your king, he is not your dream. He is your birthright. But here's the final barrier. To become him, you must bury something first. The child, not the innocent wonder, not the playful spark, but the child who waits for permission. The child who thinks someone is coming to save him. The child who blames, avoids, escapes, and weeps when life doesn't bend to his emotions. That child must be buried, ritualistically, metaphorically, consciously, not with cruelty, but with finality. Because no king is crowned until the boy with him is laid to rest. And when that day comes, when the war inside you quiets, not because you killed the parts you feared, but because you unified them, that is the day people will begin to look at you differently. They won't even know why, but they will obey the presence of a man who has gone to war with himself and won. So now, I'll ask you this one final time. What are you waiting for? A sign, a breakthrough, a moment of perfect readiness. It won't come. The throne doesn't invite you. You take it. And when you do, the world doesn't get easier. But you become undeniable. That's the real transformation Jung hinted at. Not just knowing yourself, but owning yourself fully, finally, forever.